Good afternoon. My name is Mike Fox, and I'm the Human Resource Manager at Lehigh Cement. It's my pleasure to serve as the board chair for the Chamber of Commerce this year, our 90th year of doing business in Carroll County. Yeah, right. I thought I'd start off, it was so nice coming in and being 50 degrees out, I thought I'd start with a weather-related story that I heard. I saw it on the internet, so I know it's true. And if you've heard it, bear with me, because when it's on the internet, it might have gone viral. But it's about an older retired couple back in the Midwest dealing with the weather in the wintertime. And they're sitting at the breakfast table having their coffee. The radio comes on, says, oh, it's going to be a bad one. 6 to 8 inches of snow today. We need you to park on the east side of the street for weather removal or snow removal. So the old man gets his coat on, boots. He goes out, trudges through the snow, parks the car on the east side of the street. The next day they're at breakfast, and he says, the radio comes on, 8 to 10 inches, going to be worse than yesterday. Need you to park on the other side of the street. So he bundles up, goes out, moves the car to the other side of the street. The third day they're down, and it's going to be, the weather comes on, ice, snow, everything you can imagine is happening today, and we need you to park. And just as he says where they needs to park, the power goes out. And he turns to his wife and says, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to park today. She says, well, honey, why don't you just leave it in the garage? All right. Thank you all for coming today. If I set this here. I trust you've enjoyed your lunch. It's our annual Carroll County Budget Luncheon, and you'll be hearing shortly from Mr. Ted Zaleski, the Director of Management and Budget for Carroll County. Ted has graciously been providing informative insights into the Carroll County budget to Chamber members for this 12th year now that he's done this for us, and we look forward to what he has to share. I also want to give a special thank you to the Carroll Media Center. They're here live streaming today our presentation, so thank you very much for coming out and broadcasting our presentation today. Let's give them a round of applause. As is customary, if you forgot to put your cell phone on vibrate or silence, please do that now. I want to introduce our two sponsors today who will be speaking in just a few minutes. Ryan Hastings, CPA, CVA, and Head of Marketing for Rager, Lehman & Houck, a Carroll County Chamber for 61 years. Ryan, could you please stand? And Dave Peliquin, President of Main Street Advisors in a Carroll County Chamber for 14 years. Dave? I'd like to recognize our Carroll County Commissioner that's here today, Dave Roush. Commissioner Roush. And from the Board of Education President Virginia Harrison. Vice President Jim Doolin. You see here? Not here? Board Member Gary Bauer. I met Gary earlier. There he is. And Board Member Barbara Shreve. Not here? And also with us today is the Superintendent of Carroll County Public Schools, Steve Guthrie. And now I can't wait till next year when I'm one of these people. These are past presidents of the Chamber Commerce Board. Steve Aquino Financial Group. Wayne Barnes, Life and Long-Term Care Insurance. Dave Bollinger, Barnes Bollinger Insurance Services. Mike Shank of M&T Bank. And our immediate past chair, Steve Wentz. That's my list. Have I missed anybody through that whole thing? That was my biggest fear today. All right. If you are a current member of our board of directors, could you please stand? All current members. And thank you for your service. Today's corporate sponsors are Rager, Lehman & Houck and Main Street Advisors. Our first sponsor's message will be delivered by Ryan Hastings, Head of Marketing Department with Rager, Lehman & Houck. Ryan?
I'm not really head of the marketing department. No, I kind of do that on the side a little bit, but yeah. I'm with Regular Lehman Houck, obviously, and I'm lead the tax department and also the business valuation department with the firm. We are a regional firm. We have 3 offices, one in here in Westminster, and then one in Hanover, and also in Frederick, Maryland. So we're a full-service CPA firm. We do a bunch of different things, but we certainly appreciate being here today and be able to sponsor this. We've done it for several years now. I think I may have spoken like 4 or 5 years ago. It was my turn again. So, so anyway, just real quickly, it's tax season, so I figure I'd talk just a couple minutes about taxes, just to kind of get everybody thinking about it a little bit. We all know that the tax code is complex and complicated, and I don't know if anybody here has ever dealt with an organization called the Taxpayer Advocate Service, but it's an independent organization within the IRS that basically represents taxpayers, helps them resolve problems, helps them resolve procedural issues or where they don't think the IRS is working like it should. I should ask, do we have any IRS agents in here today? No. Okay. Each year they deliver an annual report to Congress, and it comes out in January, and I always look forward to checking it out. And from the January 2012 report, they analyzed the data, and they basically said that businesses and individuals spend 6.1 billion hours a year complying with tax law, filing tax returns. And if you put that all together, it would be the largest industry, or one of the largest industries in the United States. It would employ 3 million full-time workers to get that work done. Compliance costs are enormous. The cost of complying with the income tax law was estimated to be about $170 billion back in 2010. It just seems to be getting more complicated and more of a burden to the taxpayers itself. If you did a word search in Word, there would be over 4 million words in the Internal Revenue Code. Fast forward to now, there were 2 major pieces of legislation that recently came out. The American Taxpayer Relief Act, and also everybody is probably well aware of the Affordable Care Act. But both those tax legislation had significant tax consequences beginning in 2013. And we're just in the 2013 filing season, so we're seeing a bunch of that hitting right now. But basically, ATRA, or the American Taxpayer Relief Act, increases ordinary income tax rates, increases capital gains tax rates, decreases deductions to simplify it, and for certain level income taxpayers. The Affordable Care Act also introduces the net investment income tax and also the additional Medicare tax. When you put those together, we have seen, and you can see people that are paying an extra 15 or 20% in income taxes this year over last year, the same tax situation. So we know that the code is complex, but just to illustrate that even further, it's complex that the IRS even has trouble administering it at this point. Last year, the IRS got 100 million phone calls from taxpayers, and we're only able to answer 61% of those phone calls. So 39% didn't even get through. If you were able to get through to talk to them, your average wait was 17.6 minutes. And 10 years ago, that was just a little over 2 minutes. So, they're having trouble keeping up. Even this year, they're not even answering tax questions. They took that service away this year. They're not even answering basic tax questions for people. So anyway, the other startling thing is that they've really cut their budget, their training budgets, from $170 million down to about $20 million, which is just nuts, in my opinion. But I guess, so we know the tax code is complex. It's getting more complicated day to day. Tax rates have increased for many taxpayers, and the IRS is having a difficult time administering the tax law. So I'm not telling you about this just to brag about my job security. I'm telling you this to let you know that getting trusted advice at this point is more important than it has ever been. It's important to know preparing and filing a tax return and planning for your taxes are two different things. The first one is an event. The second one is a constant, ongoing process that takes into account your personal situation and the ever-changing tax laws. Filing a tax return should be the culmination of year-round planning. You should think about it more than once a year. Most all financial events that occur, significant and even routine, have tax consequences and should be planned for accordingly. So I guess the last part here is, should you hire a CPA or not? Statistics show that about 60% of taxpayers hire a professional to complete their taxes. And that number increases to about 75% as you get to the higher income and more complicated tax returns. Tax preparation software that you see, and even the local shops that are not CPA firms, I mean, it's evolved and they provide a good service. But hiring a CPA is different, and you're going to get more out of that relationship. CPAs are trusted advisors. That word is thrown out a lot when you hear about CPAs. We do more, and we do it year round for you. We integrate tax considerations into your financial picture, and we want to be the go-to person for all your financial questions and things that come up throughout the year. We help you to consider how your financial decisions affect other areas of your life and how decisions in other areas of your life affect your your finances. We identify both short and long-term consequences of spending, saving, and investment decisions. And we can also design strategies that will help you reduce your tax liability. We address strategies to resolve short-term issues and identify tax savings opportunities for the long term. And we find that this holistic approach provides the maximum benefit to our clients. We obviously, we don't guarantee refunds. We don't say if we work on your taxes, you're going to get more money back. But what we can do is give you a peace of mind knowing that the taxes were prepared properly. You'll know that we took every single advantage of every single opportunity we possibly could, and that you have a year-round trusted partner to assist you with that's looking out for your best interests. So that's all I have for today. I didn't anticipate this many people being here today, so I think I'm a little short on our information packets, but please, when you leave, feel free to pick up an information packet and a little refrigerator clip for all those things that you want to keep on the fridge. In the information packet, there's a couple of our newsletters that you can look at. We send that out on a monthly basis. If you're interested in receiving that via email, you can go out to our website and log on and sign up for that. And also, you can follow us on Twitter at RLHCPA. I send out 30 or so tweets a month just on various topics that are short and sweet. So anyway, thanks again for your time, and enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Ryan, for your comments and also your support of the Chamber. Our next sponsor's message will be given by Dave Peliquin, President of Main Street Advisors. Dave.
Afternoon. I think this is probably our 5th or 6th year sponsoring with Rager, Lehman, and Houck, and happy to do it because the topic is near and dear to my heart. I have 3 things to tell you about, or I don't know how related they are, but they're debt, retirement, and independence. And if you think about it, the debt, Ted's going to talk about a little bit probably about county debt. I'm here to once again remind people who've heard me up here the last few years, the debt problem hasn't been solved. Federally, state-wise, county-wise. It's not a Armageddon situation, but it's going to have to involve tax increases, spending cuts, and I suspect we'll keep on going down the road as far as we can before we do any of those. In your own house, you can work on paying down debts, though. So when you retire, which is the second point I'm getting to, it's really a big help if you don't owe anybody, if you don't have a mortgage, you don't have anything but a car payment. It makes the amount of money you need in retirement that much lower. So your Social Security, your pension, your IRAs, your maybe a rental property investment account, so they can come in at a lower number, and Ryan doesn't have to tell you that you're in the 25% bracket, and that if you go and make a good investment, you're going to have to pay 30% of it to Uncle Sam. So the idea is to get your debts gone when you retire. The third thing about independence is, it's kind of related to the other two, because in retirement, we all want to be independent, right? And we want to really be financially independent. You also want to get your advice from people that you feel are independent, that you're not getting the company line from somebody, maybe because they sell a certain product, work for a certain institution, right? So all your tax professional, your investment professional, your insurance person, you want to know that they've got you in mind and not a cookie cutter. So I would urge you to put those three things together. Be thinking about debt. I mean, my God, every day we're hearing from somebody, it'll be Ted today, about bond issues and whatever. But and we like you, Ted. We really do. I love Ted. That's why I'm sitting at his table. But keep in mind in your own house, because you can't control much, right, about the federal government and the borrowing that goes on. But in your own house with your kids, you can learn or maybe reteach to them that just because you can make it on time, that's what our parents used to call it, I'm buying it on time. Now we just call it a credit card. But if you get rid of those debts when you go to retire, you'll have a happier retirement. And if you work with someone that's independent, has their own viewpoint, you can determine if you should or shouldn't work with him or her. But at least you know that the person's not just peddling a product or telling you a company line. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we'll like to hear from Ted Zaleski. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave, for your support of this event and the Chamber. If anyone's interested in sponsoring a Chamber event throughout the year, please see Mike McMullen before you leave today. There are a few opportunities left in 2014. And now our program. I'm sure most of you know Ted Zaleski as Carroll County's Director of Management and Budget. Ted is responsible for the budget, grants, and risk management functions, and he is also a major resource to the Chamber and to the rest of the community. Ted lives in Carroll County just outside of Westminster. Today, Ted will talk about the issues involved in the county's fiscal year budget 2015 and beyond, and then will be available for questions at the end. Please help me welcome Ted Zaleski.
Well, Mike said we have in excess of 100 people this year, so it's a bigger crowd than we've had in the past. And I really am happy to see that, because I always have this fear that I'm going to show up and nobody else will. And it really got bad this year, because I walked over to the other room where we usually go, and the door was locked. I said, oh man, this is bad. But fortunately, I found my way here, and there were other people. Commissioner Roush was introduced. I didn't know he was coming here, so I had to very quickly rewrite all my comments. So, if it doesn't flow well, that's why. In the introduction, they said I've been doing this for 12 years, and I got thinking about that. I said 12 years. That's a long time. A lot of things have changed. Now I remember Dave Bollinger was at the first one. Does anybody else remember? Were you at the first one in 2002? Marion says she was there. So I got thinking about what has changed in these last 12 years. The first, the animated movie Ice Age, big hit in 2002. Today they're working on Ice Age 5. Gas was about $1.50 a gallon 12 years ago. Today, more $3.50 a gallon. The University of Maryland was nearing 50 years of being in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now they're nearing going to the Big Ten. And this year, my hair is gray. 12 years ago, my hair was gray. So last year, for people who were here, I said, for the first time in some years, there's reason for optimism. And my first message today is there's continued reason for optimism. some of those things that are on my list for reasons to feel good. Carroll County unemployment has dropped down to about 5%. We've had some good news on some things in the business world. Kenora Brake, a current business in Carroll County, stayed, moved, and expanded significantly. Another company, Fuchs North America, the owner of Old Bay Spice, is moving from Baltimore County into Carroll County. There's many other things happening, but those are just two notable ones. Housing market continues to pick up. We're seeing prices grow, not rapidly, but we're seeing prices grow. Transactions are definitely starting to grow. Our recordation tax revenue, which is very directly tied to the housing market, is obviously growing now, a big change from where we've been in recent years. After 5 years of negative property tax reassessments, we're feeling very comfortable that next year will finally be a positive again. And those of you who have heard me talk have heard me say some variation of this. But in all the history I'm aware of, we only had one time where we had a negative reassessment, and that was a minus 0.4 reassessment. We've come off the 5 years of approximately 20, 15, 4, and 3% negative reassessments. So anything will be a welcome change from where we've been. In a kind of perverse way, some good news is the state has pretty much stopped funding counties, so there's little left for them to take away from us. What revenue we get from the state is a fraction of 1% of our operating budget. So there truly is little risk left to us there. And this doesn't really fit this list, but I had to put it somewhere because I wanted to mention it. We went to New York in October to visit the bond rating agencies, and we came back with our now second AAA. So we have 2 of the 3 majors were AAA. And I forget the exact number, but when we came back, I looked into this, and I think about 2% of the counties in the United States have either 2 or 3 AAAs. So it's fairly elite territory. Message number 2, we're at a turning point of some sort. I went to the commissioners recently, and I said we're at a turning point, or in the area of a turning point, or near a turning point, and Commissioner Roush kind of made a little bit fun of my being too exact about what that meant. And the problem is, sometimes when you're in the middle of change, it's hard to tell exactly where you are. And I feel pretty comfortable that we are at a point of change. We've had 5 very difficult years. I believe we're beyond them. But can I say with confidence, okay, it's done, tomorrow is better? I'm not there yet. I think that's where we're heading. But there's still uncertainty. And there's still some things that could get in the way. There's things that could change my thinking on this. State budget is one of those things. What actions will they take to balance the state budget? What might that mean for us at the county? Related to that, other legislative actions at the state. One that we're looking at right now, and I'm sure many of you are as well, is minimum wage legislation. And my point here isn't to argue for or against it, just saying that if that bill passes, that's going to have an impact on the people we employ at the county, as well as many agencies that we provide funding to. And exactly how that gets implemented, this could be a significant change in the funding that would be necessary. Teacher pensions. The shift has happened. The counties are now paying part of the cost of teacher pensions. The legislation to put this in place told us for 4 years, 14, 15, 16, and 17, what our bill was going to be. It's unclear what's going to happen after that. So a decision on how we're going to proceed could be something that makes it more difficult for us to bring our plans together. Other cost shifts. Now, unfortunately, this is the flip side. There's little left for the state to take away from us. They still have the option of giving us costs that they are paying today. And that can be a very tempting thing to do. If you're down in Annapolis, generally speaking, the saying, okay, county, you pick up this bill now, doesn't really cost them much. Nobody's going to yell at them. You know, some commissioners and county execs are going to say, wait a second, this is a problem. But it's not going to create a problem for them with the people that they represent. Which is not to say they don't represent Carroll County commissioners, but that was a joke. There's still uncertainty about the economy. Things are looking better, but there's still a lot of question marks out there. It's hard to say everything is okay. Same with the housing market. Things are improving, but are we on a nice steady line upward now, or are we riding a little bit of a bump that's going to disappear or slow down again? I can't answer that with certainty. Uncertainty about income tax. This is our second largest revenue. Notoriously difficult to predict, very volatile. But we've had 12 consecutive quarters of year-over-year growth in our major distributions, withholdings and estimated payments. Our last distribution, though, was a minus 2.4%. Any one distribution by itself doesn't give us enough to work with to say this means something. But certainly it was disappointing and makes us a lot more concerned about what the next distribution is going to be. We're hoping we see it bounce back up again. And even 2 consecutive downs still isn't an answer, but starts to make you think, well, we might have to take a different look at where we are. Water and septic. You know, there's things happening in the regulatory world that could make things difficult for us. First, water availability. If you don't have the water to allocate, you can't bring in new businesses, you can't build new houses. And there's a lot happening with regulation of counties by the Maryland Department of Environment. And then we also have legislation that is going to limit septic systems in the more rural areas. And it's not clear yet exactly what that's going to mean to us. But those are both things that could get in the way of what we might think of as normal recovery. Message number 3, if all my reasons for optimism are good and all the things that could get in the way don't, it still looks like a long, slow climb out. I'm talking about a climb out, but it's not going to be bouncing back out. It's going to be a slow walk back out of things. And just to give you some idea of why I say that, property tax is our largest revenue, about 60% of the money in the operating budget. I told you we've come off of 5 consecutive negative reassessments. And the way it works in Maryland, a negative reassessment is phased in to the homeowner immediately. From the county point of view, that means for the group that was reassessed, we know we have a negative in the first year, a 0 in the second year, a 0 in the third year. So right now we have a negative this year and 2 zeros before that. If we get a positive next year, we're still blending that with 2 zeros from the other 2 groups. And then eventually 1, and then we're back to all positive. But with the information we have available today and the growth rates that we're projecting, even when we're all positive, 6 years from now, we're still saying less than 3% growth. So this is not, you know, hallelujah, happy days are here again. It's just that things are getting better. Now, it could be that it will improve more quickly than we're assuming. I just don't have the evidence yet to make an argument to the commissioners, start building your plans on that assumption. But each year, we find out what's happened, we evaluate the information, and then recalculate. State budget, the bad news is they're starting from a $500 million hole this year. And my worry is always that their eyes will turn to the counties as part or sometimes all of the solution. Total funding in Carroll County, when I say total funding, this is what the people at the state will call aid to local governments. Talk about school systems, community college, libraries, health department, counties and towns. The biggest part of that money goes to the school systems. What comes to the Carroll County commissioners is a small piece of that number. But if we're looking at all that funding, the governor's budget would have funding to Carroll County go down $1.7 million, or about 1.1%. Carroll County Public Schools is losing either $2 million or $3 million, depending on how you want to look at it. If you look at the state budget, what you'll see is a loss of about $2 million. But there was legislation this year that was intended to give a few counties more or less a hold harmless in the state formula because they're losing students, enrollment's going down. But the legislation was written in a way that the governor had to take action to spend that money, and it looks like that's not going to happen. So the school system's plans, their budget, was built on what will now be a $3 million change in their funding. The community college is going to get an increase of almost $300,000, or about 3.5%. That is not extraordinarily good news, but compared to where we've been in recent years, it feels like extraordinarily good news. I see a couple community college people shaking heads. The library looks to lose about $20,000. Health department's going to get an increase of about $166,000, or about 12%. That sounds like a big jump, and it is, but in recent years, as the state has reduced funding to counties and all the agencies in it, counties and towns were hit by far the worst. Health departments suffered next behind them. So this is getting back some of what has been taken away from them in recent years. It will still leave them far below what state funding was 6 or 8 years ago. Towns will get an increase of about $9,000. That means all 8 towns sharing $9,000. So, I mean, it's not a whole lot to get excited about there, but it's better than a cut. The county directly, this is the money that does come to the commissioners, will see an increase of about $31,000, but that will actually be more than offset by an increased charge to the county for the cost of the state running the Department of Assessments and Taxation. So we have a net negative again, although it's close to zero. I'll switch gears a little bit here to look back a little bit and then talk about what this means looking forward. When this board came into office, there were 4 big goals they were talking about. One was limiting operating spending. Another was cutting capital spending, lowering taxes, and reducing debt. Now, there's a lot of details and a lot of other stuff that's going on, but those 4 ideas were very big in their thinking. And those things have happened. You know, if those were the goals, those goals have been accomplished. The operating budget has grown, or as we're projecting, will grow by fiscal year 15, 6.5% over 6 years. So that's pretty close to standing still. And I can assure you that the costs on the other side of that equation have not stayed in a similar position. The capital budget is smaller than it was in fiscal year 2, the year I first did this presentation to the chamber. Debt, outstanding bonded debt on actions that have already been taken has been reduced 6% since this board came into office. So that means, well, it means what it sounds like, but just so nobody misinterprets, we owe less now, 6% less than when the board came into office. If current plans were to stay in place, that would be a 21% decline by fiscal year 20. And taxes, commissioners reduced property tax twice, reduced the personal property tax and income tax each one time. Now, when we set these goals, we didn't set explicit goals. There were no targets of, well, how far do we want to go? How long do we want to do this? How do we know when we're there? And we didn't get a whole lot into, you know, what are the implications of doing these things. You know, the idea was more, we believe these are things that need to change, and we took those actions. The question I'm trying to put in front of the commissioners now is, okay, we've done that. We know where we are now. What is our intent for the future? Where do we go from here? And there, of course, there's no easy answer to that. I mean, it will be another interesting budget process as the commissioners consider these things. And even to the extent, you know, if the commissioners, after discussing it, say, you know, there are things that we think need to be getting done that aren't. We can't easily just do them. You know, to go from concept to implementation will be difficult because there is no extra money right now. You know, if we look at our operating plan, and those of you who have listened to me before, remember we adopt a budget each year, but also 5 planned years, all balanced beyond that budget year. Our plan now is balanced, but still just barely. First 3 years are more or less exactly balanced. A year after that, I think we have a 1.2% balance, and the year after that, 1.9%. So you're looking 6 years in the future with 2% room for what you don't know about. I mean, that's good, and I think that's far preferable to what many jurisdictions do, which is to totally ignore what these things might mean. But 1.9% doesn't buy you a whole lot of flexibility. So even if we decide there are things we want to do, we're not in a position where we can easily choose just to do them. Some likely topics of discussion in this budget process. I kept exactly the same list as I gave to you last year. Taxes, education, both capital and operating side, and infrastructure. We'll be talking about a lot of things, but I think those 3 things are going to get a lot of the time. And these last 2 bullets are also my same 2 bullets from last year. You know, all of you are impacted by the choices we make in the budget. So don't sit on the sideline and then complain about the budget after it's adopted. You know, if you have something to say, the time to be voicing your opinion is now, while the commissioners are having their debate and deliberations and making those decisions. With that, I don't know how much time do we have, Mike?
Another 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Oh, wow. I guess I didn't do a good rewrite.
Well, you've been going for 20, so we could take some questions.
I'll give long answers. Actually, I do tend to give long answers because people always ask questions thinking there's a simple answer, and I'm trying to tell people it's not as simple as you think. I need to give you some context. But for people who have questions, we have a microphone over there and a microphone over there. Please wait for a microphone to get to you. We are streaming this live from the CMC, and then it will also be on Channel 19, right? Channel 19 rebroadcast. And people like to be able to actually hear the questions when they're watching. So, what do we have? Come on, we have 20 minutes. There are always questions. Kurt, I know Kurt has a question. Yes, sir.
I didn't really do this to get on camera, I promise. There's a lot of talk right now in the legislature about minimum wage and the impact of minimum wage. What's that going to do to your budget? What is it going to do to small businesses that you think?
Well, I think it's out of my territory to try and talk about what it's going to do to small businesses. For us, we are right now taking a look at this, and there's no one answer to this because the answer is going to depend on if there is a change, how do you implement it? And what we're looking to do is calculate what it would cost to implement it so that you meet the law, but do nothing more than meet the law. So that's going to establish one end of what it could cost. And then we want to say, if you make the minimum wage change and then you change all your pay scale to keep the same relationships, what does that cost? And that's going to give you the other end. In between, there's an infinite number of decisions you could make about how do we go about implementing it. And I can't answer that yet because that's something first, we have to see if the legislation passes, and then second, we'll have to talk about how are we going to go about implementing it. But it's big enough that it's on my mind. Yes?
How has the health care plan affected our budget here?
I'm not the best one to answer that. Our people in our human resources have been much closer to that than I am. And there are lots of places where it touches us. Now, of course, we mostly are providing medical benefits for our employees already. So this wasn't a matter of having to suddenly provide benefits that we weren't. So it has had an impact. There are things we have to look at and track that we didn't have to before, but I can't really quantify a budget impact for you. Here we go.
Is this working? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Does the county have a surplus that is not related to the annual budget process?
Well, here you might get into what words mean and people using it different ways. We do have a reserve, what sometimes people call a stabilization fund or a rainy day fund, that is unrelated to the budget. That is about $18 million right now, I believe. It's about 5% of the budget. That can only be accessed in some very specific circumstances, though. It's not money you can just say, oh, we need some more money and grab it. Certain things have to happen. And in fact, we have never used any money from the stabilization fund. Even in the difficult years we went through, that money never came into play. Now, surplus, I think what people are usually referring to is what happens at the end of our budget year. You got more revenue in than you budgeted, you spent less money than you could have, there's some money left over. If things have worked right, we will always end the year with a surplus. By law, we have to balance the budget, so clearly that alternative isn't open to us. So unless we're able to exactly hit budget, there will always be something left over. Now, how much is left over varies from year to year. I've seen it as low as 1% of budget. I've seen it as high as 5% of a budget. When we do get a surplus, most of that money gets used for one-time purposes, which usually means the commissioners are making certain decisions to use that money in our capital budget. So you did another road, you put some money on a school or something like that. I knew.
You got the other Kurt here. When I turn on Channel 19 every now and again, you see a lot of discussion regarding education and the funding for that. Could you talk about that a little bit? Are our kids, are the school system, they're all getting what they need? I've seen about schools that they're looking to shut down. Could you talk about that a little? Thank you.
I can talk about that a little, maybe not exactly as you laid it out there. Again, you know, of course, there is a debate on is the school system getting what it needs, and there are strongly differing opinions on that, and I'm not going to try and settle that now. The school system gets almost all of its money from the county and from the state. The biggest part from the county, but the state is a very significant piece. A relatively small amount of money from the federal government, maybe 4 or 5% of their budget, and then a couple other upper dollars. In recent years, state funding has been declining to the school system. It has declined, county funding has declined as well. Prospects for state funding in the future are to continue declining for a while. We do have a plan. The plan that's in place would have increases to the school system, but modest. So clearly they have some challenges. On the idea of is it enough? I think you need to direct that conversation to the people at the school system, to your commissioners, the people in the community. You know, what do you think it's enough? We usually have to kind of say, okay, we have time for one more question. I can't believe we're trying to drag them out this year.
I could ask one.
Yeah. There you go. She's coming.
To build on the actual question of education, what are the timeframes that folks have a chance to give input on this? When are these things decided?
Okay, well, first I'd say the time frame is all the time. I mean, you don't have to wait for any special time to share your opinions. If you go to the county website, there's a spot you can click on to email all of the commissioners at once, or there's a spot where you can click to email a particular commissioner. You can call the commissioner's office. I mean, they're not always there, but you can try that. You can write letters, or you can stop them in the grocery store and share your thoughts with them. But I'd say, don't wait for any particular time. But there are certain important time marks in the process. The commissioners will begin their work to put together their proposed budget, the budget that they put out to the public to say, here's what we think we're going to do. What do you think about this? That's in mid-April. So if you want to influence the budget that they're going to put out there, then you want to do that before mid-April. Shortly after that's released, we go around the county, one spot in each of the commissioner districts to share what's in that proposed budget, what's not in that proposed budget. And it's also an opportunity where people can make their comments, ask questions. So that's another specific opportunity. The formal public hearing is early in May. Now, it's not a chance for discussion. It's just an opportunity to come make a statement, but you can do it at that point. And then the commissioners adopt the budget in late May. So for the next budget, I mean, you have some time all the way up until the end of May, but you need to recognize that once we've gotten to that point, I mean, they need something compelling to make them start over and change the budget. The earlier in the process that you're sharing your thinking, the more likely it is that it could have some impact on the commissioner's process to adopt a budget.
Kind of commercial industrial base of the taxes and the residential taxes. You had mentioned that we had some growth in the commercial and industrial parts of the county. Do you see that impacting the growth in revenue positively over?
Yes, it certainly will. This is another one of those things that gets complicated. When you look at the relationship, the percent of assessable base that's in residential and commercial industrial, one thing that changes that is you've added to it. So you got a new business, commercial industrial just got bigger. But another thing that changes it is the reassessment of the stuff that we already have. So when we went through the housing boom, commercial industrial was becoming a smaller and smaller portion of our assessable base, not because we were losing any businesses, but because the values of homes were going up so high that it was dwarfing other change. As housing prices fell, we had the opposite impact. So you could look at those relationships without thinking about that and say, wow, this is really weird. Why is it bouncing around all the time? But it's because there's other things in the mix. But as far as the underlying activity, I mentioned just two cases, but yeah, we are seeing things happening. Assessable base is being added in the commercial industrial, in our total commercial industrial base, and that will lead to revenue, property tax, and to some extent income tax if we create jobs where somebody's going to be paid who's not already paid in Carroll County, or somebody who lives in another county. But it will have some impact. It's not it's not easy to change that, though. If you think about this, a $10 million project creates $100,000 of property tax. So, a $10 million project, you say, wow, that's a big project. But that doesn't really swing the dial on the numbers that we're looking at. So you need to accumulate a number of these things for it to start to significantly impact the property tax revenue. I think there was somebody over here. Mike Schenk.
You mentioned something about the infrastructure, and I think all of us keep reading that the infrastructure is getting worse. All the towns are talking about their water and sewer plants. They need to upgrade. And I also heard you say that, we're continuing to reduce our debt. I don't think the county is going to retire anytime soon. So, but in relation, especially with the interest rates being so low, are we hurting ourselves by reducing debt and ignoring some of these capital expenditures that eventually are going to have to be done and could be done when rates are up higher and it's going to cost us more money?
And you probably want us to negotiate directly with M&T to do that, right? Yeah. Another interesting question. Clearly, there's a trade-off. If you say reducing debt is a good thing, then that means foregoing doing something that you might have done with the debt. And where is the right balance? And that's really a big part of that question I was putting out there earlier. Okay, we know where we made some change. We know where we are. Where do we go from here? Are we at the right balance? And another way to look at that, though, in a very practical way is, even if there was a feeling among the board that, yes, we want to take advantage of low rates, we're going to issue more debt, you still have to be able to pay the debt service. And if you remember, I said there's not much extra money on the bottom line. For the first 3 years, as things stand, there is no extra money on the bottom line. So taking on more debt, even at low rates, would mean we need to choose something else that we've already planned to fund that we're not going to fund. So community college, sorry. I just said that because I was looking at Dave up here.
I also want to know about the bond rating, the AAA bond rating. When you go to New York, how do you sell that, and what are the bankers looking for, and why are we different from other counties in that regard?
They look at your economy, they look at your management, they look at your debt situation, and they look at your financial management. Now, each of the three agencies has their own ways of doing that, but they're all after basically the same things. There are things that worry them and things that they like. If you are heavily dependent on that big factory, that's a concern, because if that factory goes away, your economy is in trouble. That's a real strength for Carroll County. We have a very diverse business base. Our top 10 business taxpayers are less than 2% of our tax base. So we have nobody. I mean, if the hospital went away, that would be a problem, but we're not dependent on any one organization like some jurisdictions are. We get very high marks for our financial management. And I feel a little uncomfortable saying that, because it feels like I'm praising myself, but I'm just saying, you can go back to their reports and look, and you'll see that they talk about our financial management, which is not just me. There's other people in the mix too, but we get strong marks for that. Reducing debt is a plus, but they're asking the same question Mike Schenk did. Are you reducing debt at the cost of something that's going to be a problem later? They want to see that you're making sound decisions. They want to see that you're considering the future. Another strength for us is that 6-year operating plan that I talked about, which is still a relatively unusual thing. It's not the norm out there. They like that because they can look and see, okay, you're not ignoring something that's going to create a hole for you 2 years from now. You've dealt with it. So we have some challenges. We have a large out-migration of employees, which they tend to look at as a negative. I'm not sure I agree with their thinking on it. We have a lot of people who come into the county too. And Howard County has a large out-migration as well. A lot of people live in Howard County are working in Washington or Montgomery County. But that comes up. I'm sure there are other things I could talk about. Nothing else is coming to mind now. But their reports, all the agencies post their reports. If you ever wanted to see what they say about Carroll County, you go to Moody's, Standard & Poor's, or Fitch, and you can see that. Yeah, that also reminds me. On our website, we do post the presentation that we take to New York is available to you on the website. You can see what we tell them, and it's a tremendous amount of information. We don't talk about all of it. We kind of focus the things we talk about, but there's a lot of information about county there. And also we post on the website our budget and also what's called the CAF, or the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Anybody who says there's no information available just hasn't gone to look for it. Okay, we have time for one short one, if somebody's got a question. Okay, Wayne?
This doesn't require an answer. I just wanted to say that I think it's great that we are so forward-thinking in our budget process. We were one of the early counties to move forward and do a budget projection for 5 years. And a lot of counties didn't do that, and they got caught in financial difficulty. I understand now many counties are now doing that the same way we do it, and it's turned out to be a real positive thing. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you all for coming, so I didn't have to face that fear of an empty room. Maybe see you next year. Bring your friends. Mike wants to see more paid lunches.
Doesn't Ted do a great job? Now, the first time that I met Ted, he just looked so very proper, and he's a real funny guy. You know, I keep trying to get him to wear an AC/DC T-shirt to this thing, but he's not. He hasn't done that yet. Ted also coordinates our local government day for Leadership Carroll. So if you enjoyed his time here, you could spend almost the whole day with him if you want to be part of our Leadership Carroll class of 2015, and we're taking applications for that right now. Let's go to the Chamber website or let me know. We filled the class this year. We'll fill it again for next, so the spaces are very coveted. We'd love to have you come along with us. I'd like to also just make an announcement of a luncheon we have. There's a sheet that everybody should have where you're sitting. It's for our next member luncheon, which is going to be Thursday, March 17th. And we have a guy coming in to speak. I'm not certain I can pronounce his last name, Joe McClinsky, but it's not spelled Irish, but because I'm Irish, it's like, hi, Joe McClinsky there. So, but he's coming in. He's written a book called Grow Regardless, and that book was on the New York Times bestseller list. And the basic aspect of his book is that no matter what type of business you have, no matter what type of size, no matter what industry, no matter what's happening from the outside in, you can grow your business. From what I understand, he's out of Baltimore, has like 400 people that he consults with. He's got a real proven track record. Love to see, like a lot of you send folks from your management team to this luncheon. We have a lot of seats still open, but they're going to go fast as we start to get the word out more, so we'd love to have you come for that. We'd like to thank CMC. Once again, great to have you guys here filming this for us. How about a round of applause for those guys back there? And the Best Western. It was a healthy lunch. It fit with my diet. You know, MetaFast friendly, except maybe for the rice, but it worked out. It was good. It was good. Peggy, thank you for all the hard work you do in organizing this event. Peggy deserves a round of applause. Peggy, stand up. Let them see who you are. Stand up, Peggy Soper. She's not going to. She doesn't listen to me anyway. She won't even stand up. All right, fine. I'm kidding. And I want to thank Mr. Fox for his first event as our chair of the board for this year. Mike, excellent job. Are there any announcements that I've missed? Peggy? We are launching into the Spring Energy Co-op campaign. I don't know if we have flyers out on that now, but I'm sure if you call the office, you can get the information. It's going to be on our website. It's something to definitely look into. If you want to save some money, this is the way to go. And other than that, I want to thank everybody for coming. Would ask you to have a wonderful day, and you can stay around and chat if you want to. I think all the food's gone. There's some cookies in the back. Is Commissioner Roush still here? There's cookies back there, Dave. Thank you so much.